Hi, Mark Carroll.
Hi, Karen Smith. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What's new in JCPS?
We are blessed with work. We are.
Okay, good. Good.
Making a difference in kids' lives here.
Good.
All
All right. I have 4:30, so we're going to get rolling. I'm going to introduce myself as well, and I'll let Andy introduce himself and Elizabeth introduce herself here in a minute. We are recording this session just so we can share it out with others that couldn't make this call. So first of all, my name is Mark Harrell. I am the Kentucky TSA State Advisor, as well as the Engineering, Aviation, and Energy Program Consultant within the Office of Career and Technical Education at KDE. I'm going to turn the floor over to Andy so he can introduce himself.
Good afternoon. I am Andy Stevenson. I am the Kentucky TSA State Coordinator.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Bullock. I'm the HOSA State Advisor, Future Health Professionals, and of course, we're the best CTSO for health occupations.
I can't dispute that. I would agree with that statement. So today we're going to be talking about finances. We'll talk about, first of all, how do you manage your finances? And then more importantly, how do you raise money? How do you fundraise? And then we'll also talk about public relations. How do you get your CTSO out there so that the community that you're in understands? Sorry. Okay. Andy, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll talk about CTSO financials, public relations, like I said, and then Elizabeth will wrap up with fundraising. So I can't see the chat, but please, if you have questions as I'm going through some things when I'm talking, throw questions in the chat. And then when we get to a break between financials and public relations, and then between public relations and fundraising, we will pause and answer some questions, anything that comes into that chat. So first of all, there's a couple documents that when we send out these PowerPoints to you, you'll be able to click on links, so you'll see hyperlinks embedded into here. So we've created some budgets for you, some documents where you can just start thinking out loud as far as how much money do you think you're going to need to raise for a leadership conference? How much are your state and national dues? If you have regional conferences, state conferences, national conferences. So just trying to help you understand everything that goes into attending conferences. That may look different this year depending on your CTSO, but just to help you understand all the costs associated with attending conferences, we've just made this budget sheet available for you so you can fill those in. That's something that you probably want to talk to either a veteran CTSO advisor in your specific student organization, or your regional coordinators, or even your state advisor. So if you're interested in HOSA or TSA or FCCLA or FFA, one of those CTSOs, you could always reach out to your state advisor and say, how much does regionals cost? Busing is going to be something you'll have to figure out based on the mileage between your county and where you're going, but you can talk to your bus garage about that. Registration is going to be an important piece there. That's probably per student, and then you have lodging, food, and then other miscellaneous that you may not have thought about. So just to give you a budget form that you can use, you'll be able to click on that PDF when this PowerPoint comes to you. So potential funding sources. So it's great to get kids involved in student organizations, but they also cost money. So where can you find funding? So one of the main goals or main things you're going to have to work on is fundraising. And so Elizabeth will talk about it a little bit later. If you're in a comprehensive high school, your site-based council may designate money specific for clubs and organizations. So you may want to talk to your site-based council about that. Community organizations is another one that you could reach out to, Lions clubs, elk lodges, and those types of places. Getting the community to buy into your organization is going to be crucial to help when it comes especially to funding, but also just getting them excited about what you are doing with students, either at the middle school or high school level. We'll talk briefly about booster clubs towards the end. but that's a unique way that some schools are now kind of following on the footsteps of baseball booster clubs and football booster clubs, but actually creating booster clubs for student organizations. You could always go. Every year when I had students advance to nationals for TSA, I would go to the board. I would bring those students with me. They would pitch to the board what they're going to be doing, and then at the end, they asked the board for funding to help offset the cost of travel. So, it never hurts to ask when it comes to your board of education. And then Perkins 5, and we talked about that yesterday on the call. If you missed that one, that recording will be out, as well as the PowerPoint. But Perkins can cover advisor travel and lodging. It can also cover subs for advisors, and then registration for advisors. So those three big chunks of money your students aren't going to have to raise money for. Student travel and student expenses are not covered by Perkins. And do note, especially if you're in middle school, that Perkins can be allocated all the way down to 7th grade for those funding areas that I talked about above. So if you're a middle school CTSO advisor and your district says Perkins can't be used at the middle school level, pull this slide up and show them that yes, it can. It's just they chose not to allocate it down to the 7th and 8th grade level. So that's another pot of money that middle school advisors did not know exist. So we're going to talk about Redbook. Affectionately, it's always been called Redbook. It used to have a red cover. Now it's digital. They took the red cover away, but we still call it Redbook. So you'll be able to link straight to Redbook in this PowerPoint when you get it. If you are at an area tech center, so if you're at a state-run tech center, they do not follow Redbook. So close your ears and yell until I'm done with this section. But if you're at an ATC and your CTSO is housed there, then you need to work with your administrative specialist at your school to understand the forms that you need to use. And then Lee and April are invaluable. They're out of our office, and they'll be able to help you when it comes to the accounting procedures that ATCs follow. So Redbook was updated in 2019. This is a minimum standard of accounting practices. Please note that Board of Eds can put in any documentation or procedures that strengthen Redbook. So Redbook is the minimum standard. Your district, you need to work with your bookkeeper, your district financial folks, figure out what exactly Redbook looks like in your district. So do note that the things I'm going to go over are just kind of the minimum. Districts can go in and do above and beyond, put in some more stringent accounting procedures. There's a whole host of forms. The nice thing way back when I was a teacher, it feels like 10 years ago, but I think it was only 7. Every Redbook form was a PDF, and you'd have to print it off and handwrite it. They slowly started doing Word documents. They've now moved to Excel spreadsheets, so you can type in numbers, and now the calculations are going to automatically occur for you, which is a nice improvement they did this year or last year in the Redbook forms that they have. So we'll go through a little bit about Redbook and budgets. We'll go through a couple other forms that are going to be crucial to make sure that you understand how to use them. I'm not going to read a lot of this to you, but just to make you aware of what these forms look like. You do have to do a budget every year, and that budget is for the following school year. So budgets are due to principals by April 15th for the following school year. So sometime this spring, you're going to need to work on your budget, and that will need to be approved by your principal for the following school year. And that form just looks like this. I cut out the middle part because it's just a bunch of boxes, but it's just simple information. How much money does your student org have on hand? What are your estimated receipts going to be and your estimated expenditures, and then the total, and then your principal is going to sign it. And you're going to sign that as well. Or if you have a treasurer for your club, they may co-sign along with you. So a pretty simple form just to get you thinking about costs up front when it comes to the following school year. When it comes to receipts, so this says there's some changes that have come down with Redbook over the past couple of years. And so when you collect money, so if you're doing a fundraiser and a kid comes to you and they hand you a check, money has to be collected and turned into the treasurer on the day it was collected. So if you collect 10 checks in a day, you do have to fill out the form, give those checks as well. And those go to your school bookkeeper or what's called the school treasurer. Money cannot go directly to that person. It has to come through you. You sign off on the fact that it was delivered using a multiple receipt form, which you'll see on the next screen here. And then you're supposed to count the money alongside the treasurer when you turn in that money as well. Students above the 6th grade must sign that form themselves. If they're lower than that, you can sign on their behalf. And then you'll want to make a copy of that so you have record of the money that came in. So you can see here, this is what the form looks like. Once again, I cut it down the middle just to take out blank boxes so it would fit on the screen, but pretty simple form. If you go ahead and populate a lot of this up at the top, you know, when you start filling it in on Excel, you could just print off 10 of these and have them on hand. And then all you have to do is have the kids sign, put in the amount that they're turning in, either in cash or check. And then you're going to total that, which this Excel spreadsheet does that for you. And then you'll sign, and then the school's treasurer will sign as well. Some schools still have these like handwritten, and they'll have a carbon copy. You can see down there, white copy is for school treasurer, yellow copy would be for the teacher or the sponsor. You could just print 2 copies of it or make a copy after it's signed just so you have record if you want to do it electronically. When it comes to fundraising, so there's a lot of rules on what you can and can't do, and we want to make sure that you're aware of this. So a fundraiser is defined as an organized activities for soliciting and collecting money for school or student organizations. It does need to be used for that organization. So you can't collect a bunch of money and then pay the teacher a stipend. It needs to be collected for the students to be able to use for travel, for supplies, materials that they're going to need. It does have to be, there's a couple caveats here you can see in green. So local school boards have to approve school-wide fundraisers. Once again, these are minimum standards. Some boards approve every fundraiser, but Redbook says that they just need to approve school-wide, and then principals or designee approves fundraisers that are specific to one organization within the school. Another form, of course, because we got to keep record of everything we're doing. So this is a fundraiser and crowdfunding approval form. This, once again, either needs to be approved by your principal or the board, or sometimes site-based councils also approve these if there's a council policy in place. Once again, pretty self-explanatory form. What's the purpose of it? What do you plan on selling? And Elizabeth will go into a lot more detail on fundraising here shortly. Fundraisers, like I said, have to benefit students. So you can't cover payroll staff, you can't do operating costs. And then you can see a couple caveats there that I won't go into, but you can see the A, B, and C there. There are ways that you could cover some of that. And then we also need to be, fundraising has to be administratively efficient. So what that means is, and Elizabeth will touch on this, I know she has this on one of her slides, but if it takes more effort to run the fundraiser than the amount of money you make, you need to think about the instructional purpose, and does it outweigh the cost of the administration of that fundraiser? So if it takes you 6 months and 80 hours to run a fundraiser and you only make $300, that may not be the best use of your time. So be thinking about that. So this is a big change, not this past year, but in a couple years ago. Fundraisers must benefit the entire group of students, regardless of the students that were involved. So you can't say, you know, Johnny and Susie raised half the money, so they each get a quarter of that money, and the other students that didn't do any fundraising do not get any of the money. So regardless of who helps raise the money has to benefit the entire group of students involved and not just the students that participated. So keep that in mind as you're starting to think about fundraising activities you're going to be doing. Another form, of course. So once you're done fundraising, then you fill out a summary form. Once again, the nice thing, this being in Excel, is it's going to populate and calculate for you. A lot of this at the top you can pre-populate, and then as you finish up and wrap up your summary, your fundraising, sorry, you fill in your starting inventory, your ending inventory, and then your cash receipts and your expenditures. Fill that out so you have record. And then ultimately, it's going to need to be signed by several folks you can see up there at the top. A lot of this is, it seems redundant, but it is kind of, it's there to keep you safe and keep a record of every dime that you brought in and every dime that's gone out. You can never be too careful when it comes to money these days, for sure. Yep, talked about the fundraising form. So I'm not going to go into that again, but you'll have this as a reference as you start thinking about fundraisers. You can do concessions, bookstore, school stores. So if you're especially thinking about DECA, I know a lot of DECA and marketing programs and even business programs and FBLA have school stores. You can do pencil machines, so be thinking about that as well. But of course, there's a whole different form that you'll need to fill out when it comes to those. It's a big way, a big fundraising potential. So thinking about, a lot of times the Football Boosters Club is running the concession stands during the football game, but think about if you had a robotics competition on a Saturday and you run concessions and all that money goes towards your Skills USA club or your student organization. So there is a separate form, like I said, that will need to be filled out for that. Real quick on donations. So if you have things donated, I never turned away a donation, even if it was thank you for donating this, and then we threw it in the dumpster, because you never know the next donation that organization or that employer is going to give you is going to be something that you could turn around and sell or something you could use in your program. But a donation is defined as a gift of real or personal property to the school from persons or entities outside that school system. I would have rolls of old plotter paper donated, and students would use that just to sketch on, or we would wrap things in it. We had old plotters donated. Like I said, sometimes they just sat in the corner of a closet. We never really used them, but I personally never turned away a donation, because I just felt like you're kind of, once you tell them no, they're not going to come back with something else, and it could turn in not just equipment, but it could turn into a monetary donation down the road. Allowable expenditures. So these are things that you can spend your money on, your club money or your organization money. So you can buy emblems of membership. So maybe that's membership cards, or maybe you give your officers business cards that they hand out when they go and meet with legislators. Awards. So if you do plaques and trophies, other ways that you can recognize your students for behavior or academic achievements. Student incentives. So you could use it for scholarships. School spirit, academic, and other achievements. Equipment that you may need to run your student organization, and same with materials. And then some of these don't really apply to the group we're talking to right now, but entry fees. So that could be your conference registration fees, and then obviously travel for students can be covered under this as well. Yeah, so you'll see travel here, membership. So the dues can be paid for your student organization through your club funds, contributions, charitable contributions. And then, so let's talk about booster clubs. So I mentioned that at the beginning. So thinking about like a PTA or a PTO, those are considered booster clubs. Football teams usually have booster clubs, but it's kind of a way for you to use an external organization. So it's a separate legal entity. So it's almost, it does have their own, they're probably going to be registered as a nonprofit. So they'll follow IRS guidelines. It's sometimes a way to circumvent what you're doing. So I'm going to pause there. I can't see the chat. My son is staring at me. Yes, son?
I need you to figure out the TV volume.
I'm not figuring out the TV right now. I'm talking to people on the internet.
Hi, people on the internet.
My son says hi. Go. All right, Andy, Elizabeth, Robin, are there any questions?
I don't see anything on the chat.
Book or finances in general? Okay. Does anybody want to unmute and ask a question as far as Redbook? Like I said, ATCs, ignore everything I just said. you'll have your own processes, and that's going to be something you'll have to work with your administrative specialist within your building.
But Mark, some of
Mhm.
those forms that are pre-populated in the Redbook, they could use those too. It would make their life easier if they wanted to.
Yeah, they could, but just check to make sure there's not a form they're supposed to use that's specific for ATCs. I would guess, knowing bureaucracy, that they have their own forms. They may not be as intuitive as KDE's forms, or Redbook's forms anyway. But yeah, if there isn't a form available and they wanted to use something that helps keep them organized, for sure, they could definitely use those, Elizabeth.
You got one question. It says, where do we access the Redbook?
Yeah, so it'll be linked in here, but you can also, I'm pretty sure, just Google KDE Redbook. But when you get this PowerPoint, the link way back on the picture of the Redbook, right here, you'll be able to click this link. It takes you right to the PDF, it takes you right to the web page that houses the Redbook as well as all the forms. And then you'll be able to, this next slide, this will take you right to the Excel spreadsheet. And within that Excel spreadsheet are tabs across the bottom, one tab per form that you'll need to use depending on what you're doing. And you'll see a lot of forms in there that do not apply to student organizations. So when you open up this Redbook form link and you see 30 tabs, do not get overwhelmed, because there's really about four forms that you're going to need to use for your CTSO. Well, if other questions come in, we'll take those as we come to them, but I'm going to speed up a little bit because I want Elizabeth to have plenty of time to talk about fundraising, because that's one of the more important topics that we need to cover. Moving on to public relations. So I want to talk about two things: press releases and social media. And this will go pretty brief, and then Elizabeth will take over with fundraising. So think about social media and all the ways you can get your name and your mission out there and what you're doing in your classroom. Most all social medias are very quick and easy to use, and they're also free for the most part. There's a few exceptions to that. A couple of things that I would just caution you is I would keep your personal life and your professional life separate. So maybe create a Logan County FFA Twitter account, but then also have your Twitter account on the side, and you can switch back and forth between accounts pretty easily. Me personally, I have a Herald STEM account, but we also have a Kentucky TSA Twitter account. So, when I'm talking about TSA, I can tweet out one way, and if I'm talking about Purdue football, I can tweet out the other way. But just, kind of keep your personal life and your professional life separate online, because sometimes you start blurring those lines and things can be misconstrued pretty easily. Another wonderful thing about social media is you do not have to be the one talking on social media. You can simply listen. So there's a lot of conversations that are happening, good, bad, and indifferent, when it comes to social media. You can get a lot of great ideas from social media without ever tweeting, or without ever posting on Instagram, or without ever doing whatever people do on Snapchat, because I still haven't figured that one out. Pinterest is a great place for that. I'm sure most teachers know. But especially when it comes to like fundraising, Pinterest is a great place to start brainstorming ideas. This link right here, you see at the bottom, the public relations PDF, will take you to a document that you can use, and you'll see that here shortly. But thinking about social media, you have all these different platforms, and getting your voice and what you're doing in your classrooms out to the world has never been easier. So, whether that's a YouTube channel, whether that's Instagram, whether you're using Facebook and you have your own page for your specific CTSO, or a group, depending on how you structure that. But I can't emphasize enough, because you really never know who's going to see what you're posting, and they may say, hey, we have something great in the community that we'd like to donate for you, or maybe they want to Skype in and talk to your students about what they do for a living, and that directly relates to your CTSO and your program area. I kind of listed out some of the more popular ones, and really who you're trying to target and what those are primarily used for. And I know a lot of people know about social media, so I won't dwell on this, but Instagram is much more student friendly than Facebook, for example. So if you want to target parents, your primary social media is probably going to be Facebook. Whereas if you're trying to really target students and get students excited about what you're doing in your student organization, Instagram and Snapchat may be a better way to do that. You also want to think about how your chapter officers use your social media platforms. I can tell you at the state level for our state officers in TSA, each officer is in charge of one of our social media platforms, but they do not post anything to those social media platforms before it's approved by myself or the president. So they send us a screenshot of what they want to post, or they type it out in a text, and then we give them feedback. Or maybe we want them to use certain hashtags or tag certain people before they send it out. But we just want to have that checks and balances in place before high school kids just go wild with our social media accounts. So they do have to. We're the filter before it goes live. But we do give them a lot of creative freedom when it comes to our social media accounts as well. We focus on, Andy runs our Facebook group. Is it a group, Andy, or a page?
It's a group.
Okay, so we have a Facebook group, and then we have a student that runs our Twitter, another one runs Instagram, and then there's another one that runs Snapchat. So those are the four that we chose to focus on as a student organization at the state level.
Mark.
Yep.
We had a question and a comment about being told that they should not follow any media that the students are on. And they've been told, and this particular teacher has also said that they were told not to even follow on a chapter's account, even separate from their personal. So, if the district has those guidelines, then you
Sure.
definitely need to follow your district's guidelines.
Yeah, no, I should have started with that. But yeah, this is just kind of best practice. But if you have rules in place, you need to make sure you're following those. Whatever your district has set up. Same with Redbook. They may impose different or more stringent things in Redbook as well. So the form that PDF that I linked to earlier, it just kind of helps you think about who are your state advisors, how do you follow them on social media, who's the regional and state affiliations that maybe you need to follow, nationals. It never hurts, in my opinion, to tag your district, tag your superintendent, what you're doing, tag your high school, tag your principal, CTE coordinators, and then think about your local media that you may have, your local paper, your regional news outlets. There may be something you're doing that you think it may be good to tag them. And then local politicians, public figures, think about your mayor if they have a social media account, your county judge executives, your magistrates, your city commissioners. At least follow them to see what they're doing. If that's allowable in your district. I'm going to pause there briefly for questions about social media. Anything else come in, Andy or Elizabeth?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to press releases, and that will give Elizabeth about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to go over fundraising. So press releases are something you may never have thought about. If you take students to a national conference, for example, you're going to want to tell the world about that. And it may be that they just got to attend and there was an experience that you want to tell that story. Maybe they didn't place at nationals, but the fact that they made it that far is probably something your local paper would publish. The nice thing about writing your own press release, if you call the local paper and say, hey, come do a story, they may say maybe not. But if you say, here's a press release that I've already written, will you publish this in your paper? That does not take a lot of effort on their side. So think about that as you're doing that.
That's my favorite for you to chew on.
Can someone mute? I've got some voices in my head. So what to include in a fundraiser? Usually you're going to have a headline. I'll show you an example here in a minute. You may have a subheading depending on what that is. The first paragraph is going to be the most important when an editor at a newspaper is reading this. If you don't sell them in that first paragraph, they may just move on to the next one. You don't know how many press releases they get in a day or a week. and yours just may be in a stack or an inbox, and they may be breezing through those. But you know, that first paragraph is kind of your sell. You may have a second and a third paragraph. You may have quotes and facts that are embedded within those. And then at the bottom, you're probably going to have a boilerplate. This may be your district's information, your contact information, which is probably going to be you, the writer, if you write this. It may be your secretary or your reporter for your chapter, depending on who you ask to write the press release. And then think about social media as well for this. Even if you can't get someone to publish your press release, you could still post it on your social media accounts, tagging folks that you know that may be able to spread the word for you. Always run this by your district communications staff. If you don't know who that is, I would find out before you just start blasting public press releases out there. They may also submit it out on your behalf. So it may, if it comes from a district communication person, they may have a tie with the school reporter at the local newspaper that you don't have that relationship with. So make sure it's signed off of before you just send it out, especially if you're trying to get this into the paper. Think about local radio, not just print news, but also local radios may read your fundraiser that you have coming up, or that your students made it to national conference. Think about community and local stations. So don't just think about TV, but also think about your local news broadcasts. Like in Frankfurt, we have a cable 10 that they'll pretty much put anything on it. They're just looking to fill space on their slides as they kind of scroll through. Libraries usually have a newsletter. That may be another place. And then your city events officer. So your city or your county may have someone that's in charge of posting events, thinking about fundraising again. And that could also be like your Chamber of Commerce even. They may have a newsletter that they would be glad to put something in for you. There's a template back in that link of kind of how to fill out a press release, and then a link to a WikiHow page that shows you exactly how to populate a press release. But don't be shy. If you don't toot your own horn, no one's going to do that for you. So it's crucial to get what you're doing out of your classroom into the community so they can start supporting you in ways that you maybe didn't even know were possible.
Oh, is it time for fundraising? It's Elizabeth. Yay!
I'm going to, give me 1 second. I'm going to kill my camera and mute myself, and then you just yell next, and I will advance slides for you.
Awesome. I like this teamwork thing we got going on. I don't see your screen yet. Here we go. All right, let's get to my roadmap. Can you advance it? Yes, yay! So fundraisers are just like programs of work. They're live, living documents, and they change. But if you do not know where you're going, any road's going to get you there, right? Or it could get you lost. And fundraisers are just like that. If you're not organized and don't have a path, you're going to get lost and it's not going to be effective. The things I like to do, I like to have fun doing them. So be sure you're organized, get everybody's buy-in, and let's get moving. All right, let's see what's next. So I know you think that we have killed this horse because we've talked about it and talked about it. You have got to know what the policies and procedures are of whoever you're responsible for. Many times in the Area Technology Center, they're responsible to the high school and the ATC. And local technology centers are that way sometimes too. So be sure that you know all the processes. I know we've talked about keeping those records, and they're super important. The other thing I want to point out that our career and technical student organizations are not endorsing any specific fundraisers. We are not endorsing any specific fundraisers. This is just information, hopefully to help you have a better year and make a few things easier on you. So there's various types of fundraisers. You need to find one that works for you and your community and that the students buy into. So you've chosen a fundraiser. Now what are you going to do? Next. Oh, you're going to keep records. Mark alluded to this. When you get audited, and you will get audited, it's not just money that they're auditing, but they're also auditing the products that you sold. The first fundraiser I did in my school, we sold chocolate. Well, I didn't know you had to keep up with the sold chocolate bars and what was left. That was not a very good surprise. So please be aware, you have to keep up with everything in a fundraiser. Next. So, you know, fundraisers are essential to a CTSO to be successful. It's just like your house payment or your mortgage payment. If you don't have money, you can't make that payment and it just doesn't work. Well, the CTSO is the same way. So the way that you approach your fundraiser kind of depends on what your goal is and what your CTSO is. So you need to work on that and be sure they mix together. You need to know on that program of work you have what you want to accomplish that whole year. So that's the starting point, is what is it you want to accomplish? It can be changed. You also want to start early in the year. You're like, why do I have to start early in the year? Because early in the year, kids are enthusiastic. They're going to buy in. They want to do things. They're excited. Towards the end of the year, the seniors check out. You have less and less students wanting to do stuff. So it takes a lot more work to get something accomplished. So always start early in the year. And you have to time your fundraiser. You want it a short period of time because students and adults procrastinate. So you have to have that time frame set out, and you want to keep it simple. So you also have to know the environment of your school. If you're just the greatest bass fisherman ever and you want to have a bass tournament for a fundraiser, which will be pretty awesome and you can make some money on that. But if you don't have a lake nearby, that is just not going to work. So you have to be realistic. Find out what's unique in your area. Start early and have the kids buy in. Okay, Mark. Profit margins. Mark said I was going to talk about profit margins. You know, if it's 100% profit, man, that is awesome. It's easy. Let's get going, right? It's probably more realistic that you're going to make about 45% profit, give or take 5%, which is good. But if it's less than that, you really need to evaluate it, the investment of your time and energy and all aspects of it. Now, having said that, you need to evaluate and make sure you have a positive investment and that you make money in it. There are other reasons that you can do fundraisers. You could be doing it to get an investment in your community or do a community service project, which may not be money bound. It may be a product that you're actually doing. Or you may want to get some community awareness. So it's not the money that you're making because you did this concession stand at an auction. It was the awareness for your program and your student, which is very important. Sometimes that is hard to get to. Okay, Mark. So one of the first invitations I ever got was to be in an advisory committee in a school in Breckenridge County. And at the end of the year, the gift that we got to be on that advisory committee was a shepherd's hook. I know everybody wants a shepherd's hook, right? I didn't even know what to do with one, but you know what? I have enjoyed that thing for 10 years and I've always had flowers or something hanging on it. Now, my first picture, obviously somebody is really into the SEC. So instead of flowers, there's, you know, football stuff on there, which is awesome. You know, you could have your school stuff on there. And then the next one is specific because it's got flowers, they're pretty, and then there's a bird. I mean, this is just, you know, really nice. You could hang something else on there. So I bet there's a few of you that's going, I have no idea what to do with a shepherd's hook and who in the world is going to buy that. Well, let me tell you, if you put my child's initials on it or even put a note on it that says made by, every parent, grandparent, uncle, aunt, and everybody else is going to want that. So, that's the niche. I want something that my child made, and it's something I can use, so it's pretty awesome. Now, this isn't something that you want to prefabricate. You want to get the orders and then make it, because you don't want a whole lot of product left over, because that really affects too much inventory is like losing money. So pre-order is the way to go. And it's also great advertisement for your program. Let's say I have this flower and this bird in my yard, and somebody says, gosh, this is really cute. Where did you get that? Well, you got it at the Area Technology Center. It was a fundraiser. So people will come back and keep wanting it. So a carpentry program may want to build a tiny house. Now, a tiny house has lots of bits and pieces. So they may have to work with another program area to get the wiring and the plumbing and everything else. But if that's too big a project, because they could do that one tiny house and that could be their fundraiser for the whole year, they may want to do a storage building. But you don't want to do just any storage building. You want to have some cute design, and that's what you do. And then when somebody sees that building, it's like, oh, I know where they got that. They got that at that Area Technology Center. They got that at that technical school. The other thing you can do is Halloween ornaments, and a lot of program areas can do that. I'm not talking about itsy bitsy Halloween ornaments. I'm talking about big Charlie in the front yard with there's pumpkins, it's Charlie Brown. And, you could do different ornaments for different times of the year. And then we have our engineering, laser, and 3D programs. They can get together with other programs, but one of their biggest things that they can do, if they get together with a sports team, what do you have, 5 or 6 different sports teams in each of your high schools? They could be doing recognition plaques, because most programs recognize everybody on that team. So they could design nice recognition plaques for each player. That's a fundraiser. It gets the word out. In the back of the plaque, you're definitely going to have the school on there so people knows where that comes from. So that's recognition for everybody. That's wonderful PR. So an automotive program could fix up an old car and then raffle it off or auction it off. Now, what would they do if they want more money? Oh, let me think. They get the car donated. See, that's more profit right there. A graphic arts program could do signs for the ballpark. That's always a good thing to do. Okay, so the next one is a drive-in movie in your school's parking lot. Now, does anybody think that that's a good idea? We just learned that this week on one of the presentations, and I thought, a drive-in movie in the parking lot? Well, a student came up with that idea, and students are dying to get something where they can do and get together. They can social distance. So this was a fundraiser that a student came up with. The school did it, and it was very exciting, and it worked well. So that was also great advertisement for the school. So you never know. Ask your kids. They know best. Next, Mark. FFA is very well organized, and we all know about their greenhouses and everything else they sell. And they're a great resource because they've about done it all. But realize when they do plants, or if they're doing something with fish, that's something that has to be taken care of 24/7. So when you do that, be careful about that kind of stuff. So Krispy Kreme donuts and Krispy Kreme donuts and Old Kentucky chocolates. Those are great products. Remember, when you're doing food, you have to be careful about allergies. The other thing is, if it gets hot, some of that stuff melts. And now in our touchless area, we have to be careful how we do those too. But you can pre-order those, have them prepaid, and people just drive through your drive-through in your school and pick it up with their masks on and everything, and it works. One of the CTSOs likes to do leadership funds for people to donate online. That's definitely 100% profit. And auctions and telethons. Okay, Mark. Okay, this one you're going to get to research on your own. I know you've been dying to find some research to do on your own. I just copied that. Remember, I'm not promoting. I just copied that when I was looking stuff up. So that's more ideas and suggestions that you can look at. Thank you. So next. So what is the purpose of the fundraiser? What do we need it for? How much do we need? What's the budget? And you're like, Elizabeth, I'm so tired of hearing about this money thing. Well, realize that fundraisers are not just about money. It's an activity, it's a great leadership event. It's about communications, assignments, getting organized, and teamwork. So, fundraiser, even though you're getting an end product out of it, that's money that you need to run your chapter, it's a win-win situation for the students. So, how much money you need, what's the budget, and what's our goal? What is our niche? There are some fundraisers like Country Meats, which I'm not promoting, that have everything organized for you. You just follow the steps and it's all done. I have a chapter that's been doing sports physical, so that's something they came up on their own. They make money on that, and it's organized, very well organized, and then they revamp it every year to see what to fix, make it better from the year before. Next. So the purpose, well, Mark was talking about going to local, regional, state, and national conferences. And remember on that handout that he had on his slide, it tells you the things that you need to look at for that. So please look back on his slide for that information. Maybe you want to do a field trip. Kentucky is very lucky. We have a Corvette plant, we have 2 Ford plants, we have a Toyota plant. So now I can just hear the moans. My teachers are going, why do I want to go to a manufacturing plant? Well, manufacturing plants don't just make cars. They have robots, they have welders, they even have robots that weld. They have HVAC, they have finances, because not only do they have to do payrolls, but they know what every part in that car costs and how many cars they're making and how much money they make every day, I guarantee you. Health and safety things and a lot of other manufacturing process. So it's not just for car people. And you could do that field trip with multiple CTSOs or multiple program areas in your school. And if you want to get more bang for your buck, you're going to do a field trip in the morning and a community service project in the afternoon, or vice versa, because you've already paid for the bus, so you might as well make good use of it. My programs may want to go to the hospital or visit a morgue or some labs. There's some weird things going on in those labs. Or maybe you want to sponsor a float. Well, why would you want to sponsor a float? Well, that is a great activity. It gets the kids excited. Everybody wants to be in a parade. It gets decorating, wonderful teamwork. And you probably want to be in the Willy Worm Festival or Hillbilly Days, or Kentucky is blessed with having lots of festivals. So get involved in your community. It spreads the word about your program. Next. Okay, so here I am. I'm a kind of a new chapter. So I'm going to get my 6 officers to go to the state conference, because 6 officers could fit in a van, because you're not supposed to take kids in a van that holds more than a 9-passenger van. Then I need to know kind of what the cost goes. But I'm kind of new at this. So somehow I didn't understand that all those officers are seniors. And you know what happens to seniors? They actually graduate. So who in heaven's name is going to be there next year to cheer your program on, to say, oh, state conference is wonderful? You're not going to have anybody. So whoever you take to state conference, you need a mixed bunch of people, because you want somebody to come back next year to be your cheerleader. They had a positive time, that's great, but you also want that to keep rolling and get more energized. The other thing I need to tell you is that kids need to be busy. If they're in a conference and they're not busy, you're just asking for a lot of work. So keep them busy. It makes your life easier, and be sure they have some skin in the game. And also look at your policies and procedures, because you could not take your personal van and transport kids. That's just not going to work. But many schools do have vans, and the motor pool has vans. Next. Oh, so what is this going to cost? I am so excited. Please realize that this is an estimation. It is not a true cost. So HOSA's registration last year was $60 before we went virtual, but it could range from $30 to $90 depending on what your CTSO is. Our hotel room was $118 a night. So you do that for however many nights you're going to be there. HOSA does theirs in 2 days, and it is 2 days of, whoo, we just rock and keep going. It is tiresome, but it saves the chapters money, but it's not the easiest thing to do. I just estimated on transportation for $800, but you could get a school bus or hire a bus company. Get the parents to drop them off is even better. You may have to pay for a driver. You may have to pay for mileage. As Mark said, that's something you really need to look with your transportation. And you have to request a bus. So that's not something you can wait till the last minute. Because if there's a lot of ball games going on, those bus drivers have signed up and they're busy. So be sure to do all that stuff ahead of time. I put in food and competitive event supplies and dress code. The kids have got to have some skin in their game, so they've got to pay for something, but you need to collect some money up front so that happens. However you do that is fine. You may collect $100 and then turn around and give them that money when they get to conference. It's up to you how you do that. Do you wonder why dress code costs money? Let me tell you why dress code costs money. It's because Elizabeth has a national officer of all things that goes to conference without their black shoes. Has that ever happened to anybody? We have white shirts and blue blazers. I had a girl that forgot her white shirt, and they had a list of things they had to bring. So then here you are in whatever town you're at, running out to get them the proper dress because they can't compete without proper dress. So be ready. There's always things that happen that you're not aware of. Next, Mark. All right, so we got to look at these fundraisers and their profit margins. You know, free ones are probably the best ones depending on how much money you're getting. Matching funds is good. I did not mention Kroger before. One of my advisors, Kroger's has a rewards program, and a lot of the schools do have, not schools, a lot of the stores do have that. So the parents can sign up for the rewards program because you're a 501c3. My advisor has been getting a check for 3 years from Kroger. She doesn't even know what parents signed up for it, but she keeps getting checks every month from that. So, you know, they've forgotten that they've signed up for that, so they keep getting money. So that is really a nice one to do. It doesn't cost you anything. You know, the kids go home and get it done. It can be their parents or uncles, so try that. Amazon has the same kind of thing. And there's lots of virtual ways, which I've gave you connections to do that. You also might find out where the parents are working, because a lot of corporations have giving programs that will work with you. We have an Anvesio scholarship fund for HOSA, and one of the family members called and said that they had a corporate giving program and they wanted to do that year. So that gave us $500 to add to that fund, which was really nice. Okay, Mark. I feel like I got to run fast. I'm going to run out of time. So here's my worksheet. My 6 students are going to cost $360 for registration. Remember that student organizational funds do not cover the advisor. You have to get your money from your school or however you want to get it, so be careful with that. So we're going to do this conference for 2 days at $120 a day. I rounded up that $118 for 2 days for 3 rooms at $720. Why do I need 3 rooms? I got 5 girls and 1 boy. I can't put 5 girls in 1 room. But also realize that just because you've got this all organized and you got 3 kids in this room and 2 kids in that room, don't think it's going to stay like that. Things just happen. So be prepared for people to drop, especially if they're not invested in it. Sometimes you get in with another school to help save, especially if you got 1 boy and they have 1 boy, then you pay half for that room. But even then, people back out. So be prepared for that. And remember, I put $800 for transportation, which is really pretty cheap. So now I have a total cost of $1,880, and it does not include the advisors, and it doesn't include any other things that are probably going to happen. Go ahead, Mark. So look what I did. I used my own advice. I found this fundraiser. Is this not appropriate? It's a face mask fundraiser. I'm a Georgia fan, so I was going to put a Georgia face mask on there, but I maintained my coolness and I did a St. Jude face mask instead because, you know, I want to be cool. I want to be HOSA. So look, You can have your own store. It's 50% profit. The face masks are $15 each, or 3 for $39. Most people have more than one face mask. There's only a minimum purchase of $50, so that's good. Now, if you get 1,000 face masks, they have a bulk price, which is really awesome. You design the face mask, you put the colors in, they do all the work for you. You know, it's washable, reusable, it's good quality. I mean, this is a win-win situation. Remember, I'm not endorsing this. I just found it and I'm using it. Okay, Mark. Oh, now let's look at this profit margin. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this fundraiser. There's not. They have a very good rating. So on the far left, it says that if I have sold 99 face masks, my profit is $371. Well, that's not exactly what I needed to make, right? So if I sell 399 face masks, or my chapter does, then the profit is $2,094, which, you know, would work, except, you know, there was a setup cost, and there was they had that flyer, and there was a cost for the store. So probably to be safe, and other things that I don't have in my cost that'll just happen because that's life, I probably need to sell at least 400 masks, which would give me $2,400, which would give me a cushion. So think about all that stuff. And at 400, you notice that the profit margin was 40%. When you did 399, the profit margin was 35%. So always look at those fundraisers and read the small print. Not that theirs is small print, it's pretty big, but be sure you look at all the pros and cons to everything. And you know, you could do this for your student organization or for your school. So I put another link in there for fundraisers. Also look at your specific CTSO, because they'll have on their website, they'll have things about fundraisers too, information, and they may have a fundraiser that the state or the national CTSO supports. You can look at Google or Pinterest. It's amazing what you find. Please, please, please remember that just because it's on the internet does not mean that it's true. So you have to research. Go ahead, Mark. All right, the things that I didn't say that I should have said. You want to be sure that you're passionate, that your students are passionate about the fundraisers, that they have very good manners when they're selling that, and they have a script. You don't want to get a student to have to sell something without a script. It's like your 2-minute elevator story. They need to know exactly what they're going to say. They've got to believe in it. If they don't believe in it, their heart's not going to be in it. Remember, there's lots of pieces to those fundraisers, so you want to be sure that you're organized, because a successful fundraiser only happens when you're organized and you're with the program. Always start early in the year, have it short, and find your uniqueness if at all possible. Now, I realize if you're doing something for Christmas, you can't start until November, but normally start early. And remember, I've said this, we've all said this, you've got to keep records, and they've got to be good records. So thank you for your attention. I hope you have a great year. We'll be glad to help you with anything that we can. And here's our contact information. Appreciate it. Questions?
In the chat, we had a couple comments. One that make sure that the movie you show, if you do a drive-in movie, you have permission to show it.
Oh, that's good.
And another that this advisor has been able to share the cost of a bus with other chapters within the same school district.
That's very good too.
And I put out a little commercial. Kentucky TSA has some masks for sale if you go to our website.
I'm thinking that everybody's going to do their own mask and sell them.
That's true. Well, for any TSA advisors on we're there.
All right.
Sorry,
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome. Does anybody else I see somebody said My Old Kentucky Chocolates is a great company to work with. I've heard that as well. One that I did in the past and you do have to be careful about, especially what you're selling during the school day. There's a lot of rules around. You can't compete with lunch and breakfast. But we used to do Little Caesars pizza kits, which before we got a Little Caesars in Frankfurt, that was kind of a neat, unique fundraiser. The issue is they come frozen. And if you don't have parents pick those up within 3 or 4 hours of them being delivered, we didn't have, I was at a tech center, so we didn't have access to a school, refrigerator or freezer. So just think about, what you're selling, and then how do you get what you're selling to the end customer? Because if you can't get parents to show up to pick up things. A couple other things that we did unique to the tech center that I was at, we did a video game night where we would set up LAN games in our computer labs, and then we would bring in Xbox Ones, PlayStation 4s. We'd charge a cover to get in the door, and that included like 2 slices of pizza and a pop. And then we had a snow cone machine and a cotton candy machine as part of our tech center, and the students raising the money would go around selling. We didn't want kids to have to get up, because getting a kid to get up from a screen is next to impossible. But we'd pull in $1,500, $2,000 sometimes a night, host those on Friday nights. And then another unique one we started getting into, and the IT teacher that was in the building after I left started doing breakout and escape rooms. So he would set those up on a Friday and Saturday night. He'd advertise it as a date night for parents. So as a way they could drop their kids off, they could do an escape room for 2 hours. We'd take care of the kids, we'd feed them, and there, it'd be a $20 admission fee and that sort of thing.
That's awesome. Great suggestions.
And Brandy in the chat says Yankee Candle does a great fundraiser, and they ship them straight for you, so it never even comes to the building. So great suggestion, Brandy. And Andy has bought a few of those candles, he says. Risa says culinary programs could prepare teacher lunches as a fundraiser. That's a great idea, Risa. Thank you.
I'll start working on certificates tomorrow. So if you should have your certificate by the end of the day on Monday. Thank you.
Yep. And we'll get all the PowerPoints compiled as well as the videos. And Robin will send all those out to all the participants on any of these 4 calls that we've done this week. And Cody says holiday goodies are a big hit as well. Yeah. I can't stress enough, cater to the strengths of your program. If you have, like my programs have laser engravers, and I'll tell you, one of the biggest sellers of laser engravers are baseballs and softballs. You put that softball in there, you laser engrave the kid's number and their name on it. The coach gives those out during the banquet for baseball and softball. You buy the ball for $1 and you sell it to the school for $5. And it doesn't, other than the ball, there's in electricity, but you're not paying for the electricity. You can really make a lot of money off of really unique, creative things. I'm not sure if anybody has a laser on the call, but another thing you can do with lasers, if you have a strong enough laser, you can actually laser engrave bricks. So think about the walkway up to the school. You could do those memorial bricks. You're paying $1 a brick and you sell them to the school for $15 for the labor that you put into it. And you can really make a lot of money off a laser engraver.
Well, and that's something that's going to be there for a long time that everybody can look at. I like that.
Yep. Well, with that, and not seeing any other questions in the chat or anybody unmuting, we will end this call. So we appreciate if you joined us for 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll get the PowerPoints and the recordings to you so you can, I know there's a lot to digest. Karen Smith, always a pleasure to see you.
You're welcome, Karen.
All right.
Thanks,
See
everybody.